Snake bites in the United States don't happen randomly throughout the year. They cluster hard around one specific stretch of the calendar. And it's not the month most people would guess. Understanding exactly why could be the difference between a close call and a hospital visit. Every year, somewhere around 7,000 to 8,000 people in the United States are bitten by a venomous snake. That number holds fairly steady year after year. But when you break those bites down by month, the pattern isn't a flat line. It's a sharp curve, one that climbs through spring, spikes hard in the middle of summer, and drops off just as fast once fall settles in. So let's get straight to it. The month where snake bites hit their peak across most of the country is July. To understand why, you have to look at what's actually driving that number, because it isn't one single cause. It's two separate factors colliding at exactly the same time, and once you see both of them together, the pattern makes complete sense. The first factor is temperature, and it matters far more than most people assume. Snakes are ectothermic, meaning their internal body function depends entirely on the temperature around them. Cold weather slows them down dramatically, sometimes to the point where they retreat underground and stop moving almost entirely. But as temperatures rise into a snake's optimal range, typically warm but not scorching, their metabolism speeds up, their reflexes sharpen, and their overall activity increases. Research analyzing years of hospital data in Georgia found a striking relationship here. For every single degree Celsius increase in daily temperature, snake bite cases rose by roughly 6%. That's not a small effect. That's a direct, measurable link between how hot it is outside and how likely a bite becomes. July, across the vast majority of the United States, sits right in that sweet spot. It's hot enough to keep snakes highly active for most of the day. But in many regions, it hasn't yet crossed into the extreme heat that pushes snakes to retreat and become nocturnal to avoid overheating. In other words, snakes in July are moving more, hunting more, and covering more ground than during almost any other stretch of the year. But temperature alone doesn't explain the spike. If it did, the peak would track almost perfectly with the hottest days of the year, which in much of the country actually falls in August, not July. So there has to be a second factor layered on top of it, and this one has nothing to do with snake biology at all. It has to do with us. July is peak outdoor season for humans across the United States. School is out, vacations are happening. Hiking trails, campgrounds, gardens, and backyards see dramatically more foot traffic than they do in April or October. People are gardening barehanded, reaching into brush to retrieve a dropped ball, walking trails after dark on warm evenings, and generally spending far more unguarded time in the exact environments where snakes are also most active. When you overlay a graph of snake activity with a graph of human outdoor activity, July is where both curves are near their highest points simultaneously. That overlap, not either factor alone, is what creates the spike. This is worth sitting with for a second because it reframes the entire situation. July isn't dangerous because snakes suddenly become more aggressive. Nothing changes about their temperament or their willingness to attack. What changes is opportunity. More snakes are out, more people are out, and the two are crossing paths far more often than they would in a cooler, quieter month. Now here's something that might genuinely surprise you because it directly contradicts what a lot of people assume about how these bites happen. Snake bites are not primarily the result of snakes randomly attacking people who wander too close. Research reviewing hospital records has consistently found that a majority of venomous snake bites, in some studies well over half, are classified as what researchers call illegitimate bites. That's a clinical term, and it means something specific. It means the person involved saw the snake, recognized what it was, and chose to interact with it anyway, rather than simply walking away. That includes people trying to move a snake out of the yard themselves, instead of leaving it alone. People trying to kill a snake they found near the house. People attempting to pick one up for a photo. Even people keeping venomous snakes as pets. In other words, the single biggest predictor of getting bitten isn't bad luck or an unusually aggressive animal. It's a decision made in the moment to engage with a snake that was otherwise minding its own business. This connects directly back to July's spike. More people outdoors means more encounters. More encounters means more moments where someone has to decide, in real time, whether to back away or intervene. And in the heat and adrenaline of an unexpected encounter, a lot of people choose the wrong option, so who actually gets bitten? The data here paints a pretty consistent picture. Bites disproportionately affect young men, particularly in their teens and 20s. Bites overwhelmingly occur on the hands and arms, which lines up exactly with the pattern of someone reaching toward or trying to handle a snake rather than being struck while simply walking past one. Pediatric cases follow a similar seasonal curve, spiking in the warmer months when kids are outside more and more likely to encounter a snake in the yard or on a trail. Now, before this starts to sound like every summer walk outside is a gamble, it's worth putting the actual risk in perspective, because the numbers here are genuinely reassuring. Of the several thousand venomous snake bites reported in the United States each year, the number of fatalities is typically in the single digits, occasionally reaching into the low double digits nationwide. That means your statistical odds of dying from a venomous snake bite in the U.S. are close to zero, largely because of how quickly and effectively American hospitals can administer antivenom. For comparison, you are considerably more likely to die from a dog attack, a fall from a ladder, or a lightning strike than from a snake bite. The fear is often far larger than the actual danger. But the fear isn't irrational either, because a bite, even a survivable one, can mean serious pain, tissue damage, and a hospital stay that could have been avoided entirely. So what does all of this mean for you, practically, heading into the warmer months? A few things, and they follow directly from everything we just covered. First, treat July, and really the entire window from June through August, as peak alertness season. This isn't about becoming paranoid every time you step into your backyard. It's about recognizing that this is the exact stretch of the year when the biological and behavioral conditions line up to make an encounter most likely. A little extra awareness during these months goes a long way. Second, and this is the single most actionable piece of information from everything we've covered. If you see a snake, the correct response is almost always to simply leave it alone and give it space to move on. Remember that the majority of bites happen specifically because someone chose to engage rather than retreat. Don't try to move it with a stick. Don't try to trap it. Don't try to get a closer photo. If it's somewhere genuinely inconvenient, like inside a garage or right next to a doorway, the safest move is to create distance and, if needed, contact a local wildlife removal service rather than handling it yourself. Third, when you're gardening, moving woodpiles, or reaching into dense brush during these peak months, use tools instead of bare hands wherever possible. And wear closed-toe shoes and long pants when working in areas with tall grass or ground cover. A huge percentage of bites happen specifically because a hand went somewhere a snake was already resting, out of sight, and the person had no warning before contact. Fourth, if you do get bitten, the response matters. Stay as calm and still as possible to slow the spread of venom through your body. Remove any rings, watches, or tight clothing near the bite site before swelling sets in. Do not attempt to cut the wound or suck out venom, both of which are outdated methods that do more harm than good. Get to a medical facility as quickly as possible, since modern antivenom treatment is extremely effective when administered promptly. Here's the bigger picture worth walking away with. July's spike in snake bites isn't evidence that snakes become more dangerous during this month. It's evidence of two ordinary, predictable patterns intersecting. Snakes reaching peak seasonal activity, and humans spending more unguarded time in the same spaces those snakes occupy. Neither side is doing anything unusual. They're just both out there, at the same time, more than during any other stretch of the year. So the next time July rolls around and you're heading out to garden, hike, or just spend an evening in the backyard, you'll know exactly why this particular month carries the highest risk, and exactly what actually reduces that risk, not fear. Not avoidance of the outdoors entirely, just a little more awareness. During the exact weeks when awareness matters most. And the simple discipline to leave a snake alone the moment you see one.